Hello, I'm Lee Povey,
And I'm Steve Maller.
and we are two high performers who have transitioned from the world of sport to business as high performance executive and leadership coaches to those looking to take themselves and their companies to new heights,
The road to success can seem like a lonely one at times.
especially for a founder.
So we decided to form the Founders Catalyst, a show that provides the very support system necessary for founders, leaders, and high performers like you to receive the coaching, community, and catalyst required to ignite your journey.
To be clear, this is no place for fluffy content that only covers the highlights of achieving an ultimate goal.
Instead, our mission is to deliver the difficult conversations that most people may be afraid to have. The ones laced with truth, vulnerability,
And impactful insights from our first-hand experiences in the trenches with founders and leaders operating at the highest stakes.
You don't have to go it alone through the highs and lows of leadership and business ownership anymore.
Let us be the catalyst that you, your company, and your entire ecosystem need to excel in unprecedented ways.
This is the Founders Catalyst. And we are back for another episode of the Founders Catalyst. Lee, how are we doing, brother?
I'm doing great, buddy. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. I was just telling you, I just came from a workout, which I'm sure you can tell. You know, shirt's a little tighter, so feeling good.
You are looking swole.
As they
With a
say,
capital
as
S.
these Americans say, swole. It doesn't even. I don't. Is that in the British, in the Queen's English or King's English? Sorry, swole doesn't quite. It doesn't come off the British tongue the way it does an American tongue.
No, I think buff was what I would have said as
Buff,
a kid.
yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I would have said it. I would never have been mistaken for it. That's for sure. But that is the case. Mate, let's get into it. We've got a couple of episodes under our belt now. Really excited just to dive into this notion of how will they cope without me? And when we think about this from a founder's standpoint, you know, for that to be the case, obviously you're off and running. You've got a team. You've got people around you, and then there's probably this reluctance to walk away and assume that things will carry on the way that you would like for them to be carried on. So I'm going to just throw that ball up to you to begin with, see what resonates with you, and let's get this thing moving.
Yeah, I think this one's a two-parter. Part one is how we as leaders are able to relax, step back, take vacations, take holidays, take the breaks that we need. And obviously you and I as high-level sports people and coaches of high-level sports people know how vital rest is. Well, I believe it's just as vital for business leaders. So I think that's part one. And then part two will be with a rapidly scaling company, which is a lot of the work that we both do, is how you empower your team and let go of having to own everything. So, starting with part one and just thinking back to myself, back in my early days of entrepreneurship, when I had my real estate business, I used to hate going away. I used to be afraid of going away on holiday. I used to just get so stressed before it. And when I was away, I couldn't fully enjoy it because I was panicking, what will happen without me there? And that was, what will happen without me there going and doing the valuations? Because I was the guy that you sent round to someone's home to convince them to sell the property with us. That was my biggest role. Obviously, I was the leader of the company as well and coaching the sales team and all of the leadership role. But my main day-to-day job was I went round to your home and I said, you should be selling with us. So I was then relying on other members of my team to do that. And then there was just what if something goes wrong? What if a client's unhappy? Will they work as hard without me there? Are they going to slack off and get lazy because the boss isn't around? And that used to cause me a lot of stress.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, this is where our stories are different because, well, actually, no, let me push back against that straight away, pushing back against myself. Because we both were in that world of elite level sports coaching. And so I didn't have the career before the career like you did, as you did with the real estate. But it immediately takes my mind, and I continue to see it up until the day I walked away from elite sports coaching, was a coach's inability to say, I'm going to take a break. And the only time they would ever consider the possibility of taking a break when it would coincide with when the athletes were taking a break. And that wasn't a very long period of time, quite frankly. And I always, I thought about that so many times over the years, because I would go back to when I was an athlete, and I would always think, if my coach wanted to take a trip for a week, I'm still going to train. I'm still going to train. I'm not going to think any less of them. They're a human being. They want to go on a trip. I know I need to be here working hard. And I was at an age of 18, 19, 20 where I would want to be working hard. And I think in that, I'm almost moving to that second part now. And I'm trying to refrain from doing that, because that is the empowerment piece that you were talking about, that ability for an employee, let's say in this world of startups, to feel so empowered and motivated towards the work that in the leader's absence, they're still going to crack on and do the work. So just to go back to that desire and that necessity to relax, I'm curious, just from your own story, mate, like, was there a point with the real estate stuff where you were able to finally just say, enough's enough, I need to unplug, I need to get out for a little bit?
Yes, and it was kind of forced upon me. So I started my real estate with a friend of mine, guy that I'd worked with and admired a lot. However, pretty quickly into the journey, I realized we had very different ideas of entrepreneurship. My idea of entrepreneurship was, I'm going to work even harder for myself than I worked for somebody else, because I am building something that is setting me up for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. And therefore, I'm prepared to do the extra hours, to go above and beyond. Unfortunately, my business partner's idea of entrepreneurship was, that means I get to spend more time with my kids and I get to spend more time at home. And while I understand that and I value that part of it, we weren't at the stage where we could afford to do that. We hadn't built a business big enough to afford for, one of our key players to be spending more time away from the office than he was spending in the office. So I had to go through the stressful period of, unfortunately, firing my business partner. At that point in life, easily the most stressful thing I'd ever done, and still ranks in my top 5. I loved him as a human. It was very difficult for me to do, but it was also 100% the right thing for the business, because it couldn't financially support somebody who was, taking half the profits and on a decent salary, but was not there actually contributing enough. So once I did that, then, I'm carrying the load of the business by myself with a bunch of obviously staff working for me, but all the responsibility was mine. And I just got exhausted, absolutely exhausted, to the point that I had to take a break. It was kind of forced upon me. My team was saying, look, you need to take time off. You're not effective right now. You're too burnt out. So I took a I think it was 12-day snowboarding trip to Whistler, Vancouver. And when I came back from it, I was so refreshed. I had so many ideas. I was so ready to get stuck back into work. It was a really strong reminder for me of, not only do I, as an athlete, need physical breaks, but as an entrepreneur, I need emotional breaks. And those emotional breaks actually will allow me to perform more, to come back more energized. And this is exactly what I see with the founders that I work with. Often when they're burning too brightly or too much or just doing too much, their productivity actually goes down. And how do they combat that? Oh, I'll do more hours. I'll stay at the office for longer. I'll do more calls. But the effectiveness of everything drops so much that they come to the point where it's kind of either forced upon them. There's a physical breakdown, an emotional breakdown. Their team's telling them to go away and they need a break. Their relationships are failing, be that at work, be that at home. And my job, just as it was as a sports coach, I really resonate with what you said earlier. All of the best athletes I've worked with, my job has been to slow them down. Yeah. Not to give them more training, but to say, hey, we need to back off here. You need to take a break. Or, we're killing it right now. We need to plan that we're going to have these breaks because you are absolutely destroying yourself in training. They are intrinsically super motivated. And it's the same with founders. These people are very, very motivated. My job often as a coach is to reflect to them that they need some space. And they need some space for creativity, and they need some space for rest, and just how vital that part of it is. And because of our background, I know you're the same, I have a very holistic approach to coaching. What are you doing physically? What's your relationship like at home? How are you getting on with your family, your kids, your parents? Let's work on that as much as we work on the business and how you're getting on with people at work, so that you are able to... One of my founders put it really well. He said when he first started the business, everything was a sprint. So they were using the sprint model. They were doing kind of 3 or 4 week sprints at work. But his mindset was, it's a sprint. I'm running flat out the whole time. And the big shift from him is now, it's maintain. What can I maintain? What is a cadence that I can maintain? So I'm showing up the best version of myself continually. I'm taking the breaks when I need to take them. And then I can dip back in and get back to that really effective level.
Yeah, there's something I always like to do is highlight where there's a need to finish the question that people are asking, because sometimes we finish the question too short. So a lot of people are asking every day, what do I need to do today? What do I need to do today? And what you're saying here is, what do I need to do to be effective today? It's just that slight shift to be able to not just simply say, got to get stuff done, because that's when the word busy creeps in. And I have a couple of colleagues in this space that I share this sort of just really, I kind of hate it. I hate the term busy. It's just like, because it doesn't tell me that you're being optimal. It doesn't tell me that you're being effective. It tells me you're just doing for the sake of doing. And I try with every fiber of my being when someone asks me how are things going to never use that word, because and I think it's a word that a lot of founders will almost use with a sense of pride. It's just like, if I'm busy, business is thriving, right? I've got all these clients, I've got all these customers, I've got all these different action points that we got to be hitting and getting done by the end of the day. But even just something as simple as, let's not make it about what you're doing today. Let's make it about how you can do those things effectively. And again, in my coaching space, I've just to kind of piggyback off that final thought of yours there to the holistic approach. The moment I started my coaching program and my offering, I came up with this term, the optimal self. And I mean, I didn't have a client when I started. All I knew was just like, there's a version of oneself that we can aspire toward. And as I create this coaching service, I know that what I want to be doing is work that's helping people fulfill that. And in doing so, business is going to be great. Family is going to be great. Health is going to be great. Spirituality is going to be great. All these buckets are going to get attended to, even though there's going to be these times, obviously, throughout the year where one bucket requires significantly more attention than the others. But I love asking that question to my clients now, this notion of, hey, listen, what can we do that doesn't come at the expense of your optimal self? You know, what can we do that doesn't come at the expense of your optimal self? At least long term. Short term, sure, we're going to have a couple of sprints, like you said, with that client of yours, and it means it might be a few late nights. But when a few late nights turn into a few weeks of late nights, that's when we start to get into a position that it's no longer serving our optimal self. It's no longer allowing us to perform effectively. And to your point, it's where we start to have to take our foot off the gas and figure out how to recharge.
Try this again. Sustainability is the key. Mm-hmm. Welcome to the dyslexic kid.
I was going to say, yeah, you even mispronounced dyslexic. So.
Sustainability is the key in everything, right? As an athlete, there's no point training so hard, you get injured, you get burnt out, and then you can't perform. And it's exactly the same for founders. You can't work at a level where, back in the day, people were drinking stupid amounts of coffee and not sleeping or taking other kinds of stimulants to keep themselves going. And then they have a nervous breakdown or they quit and retire at 40. What we're looking for is sustainability. That doesn't mean that founder is going to work at that company for the rest of their lives. In fact, many of the founders I work with build something, sell it, build something else, or build something doesn't quite work, let that one go, learn from that experience, go and build something better in the next one. But what we're looking for is you to keep finding ways to feel fulfilled and to keep building and building and building in a sustainable manner. And that does require knowing what your limits are and then working up to those limits, but not constantly going over the limits, because then you cannot be effective. So I have an exercise that I do with my clients that I find really helps them. I got it from a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, which the title's a little bit janky, especially for when you're a young British man and you think you're really tough. So I got this book from a friend in my early 20s. Like, I think you should read this. And I'm like, I don't feel fear. I'm never reading this. Well, 6 months later, I got round to picking it up. And it's a really cute self-help book. I really enjoyed it. And this exercise is called the 9-box exercise. So you split your life into 9 separate boxes, and you get to decide what the titles of the boxes are. So, one could be relationship, one can be hobbies, one can be family, one can be friendships, one can be work, one can be personal development, one can be health and nutrition. And the point of this is, one, to realize that your life is more than just work, or it's more than just your romantic relationship. And should one area of your life be struggling, you can look at this and go, well, look, hey, I have 8 other areas of my life that I can lean into now. I still have a full life. My life is not about one area of my life. And it's also gives you intentionality. What am I doing to maintain the relationships that I want? What am I doing to maintain the health that I want? Look at spirituality. I'm not particularly spiritual. Many people are. What are you doing to fill that bucket up? For me, I find that bucket gets filled through connection. So that's why I created men's groups. That's why I was in men's groups. For me, being in connection with other people is really important. So what are you doing to maintain those buckets? And when I do this exercise, what I often found is, first, people cannot get 9 categories. So they put 9 categories in, but 4 of them are the same category with a different title. I'm like, okay, we're going to collate all those together, and then you're going to go back and do it again, because we're looking for more richness in your life. One of mine is travel. Travel's really important to me. I love traveling to new places and having new experiences. And it's also interesting how different everybody's is. We have the main ones: career, work, family, that kind of stuff. But then there's half of it is all different. So it's really interesting to see when people stop and get very intentional with their life, coming back to that effective you used, or that optimal self, where you have to stop and really reflect, what is my optimal self? And what do I need to do to create it? And then what am I going to need to do to maintain it?
Yep. It's powerful stuff. And it's in my mind, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of, myself when I was at a certain point in my life, and there's maybe folks listening to this, and we're trying to get to those kind of individuals that maybe are just starting out and they're getting some momentum with their startup and they're feeling as though they're finding their feet in a lot of ways. And I can anticipate a lot of folks, similar to that story of yourself with the real estate business, just being like, I get it. There'll come a time for that. But right now, I've just got to crack on. Like, I appreciate the insight. It sounds like a really amazing situation once I get there and I have the ability to do that. But what I'm going to assume about yourself, because you've given me a decent amount of insight since you started your coaching business, and it's very much the same for me, is that when I started my business, I was so committed to this. Everything that we're talking about, I was so committed to not allowing myself to give in to growth. And growth is a great thing, but if we don't put parameters on it, to your point, if we don't create these 9 boxes, at some point we're growing in one of these boxes exponentially and we're just doing nothing to acknowledge the other 8. And typically that's going to be the driver of success, the driver of income that we're going to focus on. For me, just to give an example for anyone listening, it was really important to get clear on an accountability system, if you will, for when I ever felt intuitively that I was doing too much. To be able to have this check-in at the end of days and especially at the end of a week, and just be able to sit with myself and say, are you or are you not exhausted right now? If you're exhausted, what are you gonna do about that information? Are you gonna just get to bed early and just carry on the way you're doing it? Or are you going to make a shift next week across the board to ensure that exhaustion is not a state that you find yourself in at the end of every single week? And to my point earlier, that there are cycles where I do get to a point of exhaustion. We were going to record this yesterday, and I was exhausted. And I told you, I was pushing it too hard for a couple of days, and I wouldn't be able to bring my best self to this. And just that very acknowledgement and getting clearer intuitively on myself and the fact that my health and wellness is, without a doubt, one of my main of those 9 boxes. I'm going to go away after this and create my 9 for sure. But I think for me, when I think about my intuition around myself, to work so hard on getting to know myself to where I can intuitively always know you've gone beyond. You need to pull back, and it cannot just be a short-term fix. You need to go back and look at the last week, the last month, and say, where did this occur? How did this happen? And how can you maybe do some work to ensure that this isn't a regularity and does not become part of the norm?
Yeah. And this is where coaching comes in. So use your example of yesterday. So there's 2 things I want to reflect back from what you said there. The first one is use your example of yesterday. So you messaged me and said, I'm not going to be able to bring my A game. I think I can do 1. And we chatted, and I'm like, no, let's do none. So, this is what a coach does. Now, I'm not your coach. However, a good coach reflects to you, no. There's no, I don't want 50% of you. I want 100% of you. You don't want 50% of you. So let's not do this. Let's book another time to do this. And you have the self-awareness to go, look, I can't perform at my best today, but we're still competitors. So there's still part of you. I will push through. I will grind through it. And what we're really looking for is to minimize the grind and maximize the effectiveness. So how can you keep showing up? Not grinding, but showing up really performing. And, there's a reason why I call myself a high performance coach. There's a reason why you call yourself a performance coach. 1, because of our sporting backgrounds, and 2, because we are about enabling performance from people and getting performances from people. And that's going to go into the second part of this about how you empower others. And then the other one is success. And there's a misnomer about what success means, certainly for me, and I think many of the people that I work with. When I look about financial success, that's definitely not in my top 2. The most important thing for me is having impact. And by impact, I mean changing people's lives for the better. Since a little kid, I've been really drawn to, how can we have a better experience? And that started with sport, right? How can people have a better experience in sport? And originally that's how can we perform better, go faster? Then it's like, well, how can you actually enjoy this more? And I was really getting into the psychology of how can you turn up and enjoy an event? And I was working with a coach through the Tokyo Olympics, and we had a 15-minute check-in every day. And that check-in was to get himself into the mindset so that he could walk in and he could enjoy his day coaching to enable his athletes to enjoy it. Because you might only work at one Olympics, you might only compete at one Olympics, and that's incredibly rare as it is. Most athletes are not going to go to Olympics. Whether you win a gold medal or not, what you want to do is also walk away from that and go, I'm so glad I had that experience. What a wonderful experience it was. And that's what he had. And we had that kind of 15-minute check-in, motivational, download all the things that were stressing him. Right, now go there and enjoy your day in the velodrome. And he messaged me afterwards and said that was the most enjoyable competition he'd ever worked at as a coach, which is how it should be.
Right.
And it's the same for founders, and it's the same for me. So this success is, one, I want huge impact. I want to make people's lives better. And then two, I want to enjoy what I do. Like, I love being in a group call with a bunch of executives at a company, and we check in and everybody's stressed and annoyed and there's conflict and derision between each other. We check out and everyone's like, oh, I feel really aligned now, and now I'm really ready to go, and I'm energized and I feel joy. And it's the same thing that happens when I run men's groups. Guys check in with stress in their life and problems. They hear each other, they're present for each other, they check out and they're like, I can't believe how much better I feel from spending 90 minutes with another human being. Mm-hmm. And then kind of financial freedom and like physical freedom. So the ability to travel, which comes in with financial freedom, the ability to work from wherever I want to work. That's 3 or 4 for me. So when we look at success, what really is success? Typically, we look at success and think, well, who's the richest? Who's made the most money? That's not linked with happiness.
Yep. It's not. It's not. And I mean, I think that might have to be a whole podcast in itself. So I don't necessarily want to go down that path, but
we'll come back to that.
But what I do want to do here is I do want to make this officially 2 different parts. I don't want us just to carry on and just make this all one, big episode like that. I think this is a great place just to slowly start wrapping this first part of this episode up, and then we'll actually have a separate second episode on this notion of, how will they cope without me? But to help summarize what we've spoken about here, this notion of working effectively, this idea of maintain and sustain, these are massive. Again, I have to assume anybody listens to this, you're not looking to be an overnight success, because if you're an overnight success, you're probably going to have a very short lifespan. Usually short-term improvements lead to short-lived success, in terms of that immediacy of the success. And we want to sustain, we want to maintain. But that last piece cannot be that you just mentioned here, Lee, that the notion of enjoying it, like that we can't avoid, we can't dismiss that part. That is such a huge piece of this. And if you do find yourself stuck on the to-do wheel, to-do list, and that's all you're doing, if that sounds like you right now, my challenge to you is with this question, are you having fun? Are you really having fun doing it that way? Because I'm going to assume that you're probably not. And like, that is a question that we have to start asking ourselves consistently, right, mate?
Yeah. A smart friend of mine, Coach Kari Sulanas, she does energy audits with her clients. And the point of that is, does this thing give me energy or does it take energy away from me? To really get them thinking about, am I doing what I'm most effective at, which is typically the things that you enjoy the most? Or am I doing a lot of, as you call it, busy work that isn't being effective because somebody else could be doing it? One of the things I often reflect to companies is the person doing the work, how much are they getting paid? And could you find somebody else to do it at a cheaper rate? Because if the founder is earning $1,000 an hour or $500 an hour or whatever they're earning, and they're doing work that somebody else can do for $25 an hour, that's an unbelievably bad use of the company's resource. Mm-hmm. So I really like people to think about, what's my worth? What's my hourly rate? And can somebody else for a cheaper hourly rate be doing this? And then what's the things that only I can do? What's the things that deserve my income? And getting really clear as well, again, going back to this busy work, there's a whole thing about grind, from the 80s, from Wall Street, sleep when you're dead. Well, you will be dead if you don't sleep. So let's take that for the first thing. It is entirely possible to be unbelievably successful financially, emotionally, impact-wise, and still work at a sustainable rate. This myth that you have to absolutely flog yourself, kill yourself, I think there's a lot of ego in it for people. There's the ego of, look how hard I work. And I'm not saying you don't need to work hard. Coming back to what you said about overnight success, I don't really believe in overnight success. I'm yet to find many people that have had what we would call overnight success. So there's two big myths for me. One is overnight success, and one is the self-made person. I haven't met either yet. I've met people that have had fast success, but they've also had failures beforehand. So if you think of things like music, the one-hit wonder, I guarantee they played gigs that nobody turned up to. I guarantee they released records that nobody cared about. But you just see that one because to us on the outside, it looks like they've appeared from nowhere. And that's what often happens with businesses. It looks like they've appeared from nowhere. We don't see the background. We don't see the 10 years that went into it. Even athletes, somebody turns up at Olympics, you've not heard of them before, they go and win the gold medal, and you're like, who is that? Where did they come from? You have no idea about the 8 years that they've been training to get to that point before they made that big jump. So, yeah, I think I keep coming back to, I really liked what you said. I think to wrap this up, I really like what you said about the optimal self. Think about breaking down your life, use that 9-box exercise, and you should be checking in with that at least once a quarter. Am I in line with my 9 boxes? Is one of my boxes lacking? Do I need to step in here? Am I neglecting my relationship? Am I neglecting my health? Am I neglecting my hobbies? What do I need to do to change it? When I quit elite cycling, one of my boxes was cycling. What I realized was that box should have actually been competition. So I changed it to competition. Then I started go-kart racing because I realized without competition, I can be like not fun to be around sometimes because I'll project that competition into areas it shouldn't be. When I have an outlet for it, I'm a very happy, chilled person. When I don't, I'm looking for ways to be competitive that's not good for other people around me. And that 9-box exercise really helped me recognize that. So yeah, do you want to be busy or effective? And do you want to have an optimal life? Or do you want to have a kind of ego-driven life of like, look how hard I'm grinding?
Yeah. I think this is a perfect time to make that transition from the self into the team. And we'll do exactly that. So we're going to make it as smooth as we possibly can. I'm literally just going to say, join us for the next episode. Join us for the next episode where we continue this conversation. Thanks again for listening to the show. If you like what you heard, appreciated the witty banter, and of course, appreciated the quality of the insights we provided, please take a moment to give us a 5-star rating.
It helps us reach a larger audience so we can support more people just like you. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform.
There will never be a better time than now to start investing in yourself, so be sure to act upon what you took from this episode and let us know how it goes. We love hearing from our audience.
From Steve Meller and myself, Lee Povey, thanks for listening and being you.